Okay, today we're going to go over lesson 2.07, all about triangle angles. And we're going to do a quick Module 2 DBA review because you do have a DBA scheduled or planned for this week. So let's go ahead and begin. The angle sum property, basically this states that if you add up the angles inside of a triangle, your total is going to be 180 degrees. It doesn't matter how large or small the triangle is, or what type of triangle, or what shape it is. If it is a triangle of any kind, the angles inside will always add up to 180 degrees. Now, when you're trying to find the missing angle of a triangle, you can set up an equation since you know that the total has to be 180 degrees. In this example here, we see that we have an angle that is 74 degrees, another angle that is 80 degrees, and this is an angle that we do not know. So we can go ahead and set up our equation 74 plus 80 plus x, which is the unknown angle, equals 180 degrees. And the way we solve this, we add 74 and 80 together, and we get 154. And then we subtract that from each side, and we're left with x equals 26 degrees. So this angle measures 26 degrees because if you subtract these two angles from 180, you're left with 26, and that's what the final angle has to measure. Now the triangle on the right is labeled 82 and 67. So to solve that, we're going to add those two together, and we get 149. We're going to subtract that from each side, and we are left with 31 degrees. Now, those angles we talked about were considered interior angles of the triangle. There's something else that this lesson goes over called exterior angles, and these are angles that are located outside of the triangle. Their sum is 360 degrees. It's different from interior angles. Now, in this picture here, angles 4, 5, and 6 are considered to be exterior angles. If you were to add the measurements of angle 4, angle 5, and angle 6 together, you would get a total measurement of 360 degrees if you add those all together. So quick reminder, the interior angles, angles 1, 2, and 3, add up to be 180 degrees. The exterior angles, angles 4, 5, and 6, these are all going to add up to be 360 degrees. The next one you need to know are remote interior angles. When you look at a triangle, you see that the exterior angles are located outside of each vertex. The angles inside the triangle that do not share a vertex with the exterior angle are called remote interior angles. So that's a rule that you need to just memorize. The measure of an exterior angle is equal to the sum of the two remote interior angles. So let's go ahead and give you an example of that. So in this example, in these two examples here, this exterior angle, notice how it is connected to this vertex. So angle R on the inside is attached to it. So that one is not the one we look at. We want to look at the remote interior angles. They're the ones that are not attached to the exterior angle. If you add these two together, angle S and angle T, you would get the measurement for the exterior angle R. Okay? Here's another example. If you know that the measure of angle A is 60 degrees and the measure of angle B is 45 degrees, what is the measure of angle D? So there's a couple of ways to do this. You know that A, right here, is 60. Let me go ahead and write that. 60. You know that B is 45, right here. So we want to know D. Now, the first way to do that is to notice that C and D make up supplementary angles. So their measurement is going to add up to 180 degrees. The way you can figure out what D is valued at is to recognize that A and B are remote interior angles. So if you add their totals together, you're going to get the measure of angle D. So 60 plus 45 would be 105. That means that that has to be what the measure of angle D would be. And this is basically what I just went over. So here we go. Triangle similarity. Triangles are similar if they have the same angle measurements and shape, but they can be different sizes. In order to identify what parts of a triangle match up to another triangle, you have different marks that are placed inside of the angles. Matching the number of arcs will tell you which angles match up or correspond to one another. In this image that's shown up here, angles A and P have the same measure. You can tell because they both have one arc. Angles B and Q have the same measure since they have two arcs. So because they have the same markings, that means that they are equal measurements. Angles that have the same measure in similar triangles are called congruent angles. So when they're the same, they are called congruent. And here's another rule that we need to know. It's called the angle-angle criterion. If two angles of a triangle are congruent to two angles of another triangle, then those two triangles are similar. So these two triangles are similar because angles B and E have that one mark, and then angles F and C have the one mark. So if these two angles match these two angles, that means that A and D also have to be the same because they'd all add up to be the same number, and then that subtracted from 180 would give us the measurement for D and A, and it would have to be the same. So because of that, these two triangles are similar, even though they are different sizes, because similar triangles can be different sizes. Okay, so we're going to practice. This figure shows triangle RTF and a line segment XY that is parallel to TF. Is triangle RTF similar to triangle RXY, Y, or Y not? So we see here that RXY and RTF, they both have the same measure for angle R. So that's going to be one similar one. TXY and TF, so this line and this line, they are parallel lines. So that means that these angles are congruent, and this one and this one. So because all the angles are congruent, that means that they are similar triangles because they have at least two congruent angles. Are there any questions about 2.07 before we do the Module 2 review? All right, well, if you have questions, let me know. I can go ahead and start the Module 2 review. So the first question that you might be able to expect on either a DBA or a test, there are three types of rigid transformations you learned about. You learned about translations, reflections, and rotations. Now what makes two figures congruent? Congruent figures have the same size, they have the same shape, the same angle measurements, and the same side length. For it to be considered congruent, you have to be working with the exact same shape in every possible way. Do rigid transformations create congruent images? The answer is yes. Rotations, reflections, translations, these types of rigid transformations do not change the shape, size, or angle measurements of an image. The pre-image will always be congruent to the image that is created. Now, a dilation is a little bit different. A dilation is a transformation that changes the shape's size. It shrinks it or it expands it. When you perform a dilation, the pre-image is not congruent to the new image because the size has changed. However, dilations do create similar figures. They have the same angle measurements and they look like the same shape, they're just different sizes. So because the size has changed, it's not congruent, it is similar. Adjacent angles are two angles that are next to each other, like A and B here. They share the vertex, or the point where they meet, and exactly one side. So that is the definition of an adjacent angle. Supplementary angles are when two adjacent angles form a straight line. Notice how the bottom here is a straight line. That means that this measure of these two angles will add up to be 180 degrees because the measure of a line is 180 degrees. How could you use the triangle sum property to find the measure of one unknown angle of a triangle? Well, keep in mind that all three angles of every triangle must add up to be exactly 180 degrees. To find the measure of one unknown angle, all you have to do is add the measure of the two known angles and subtract the sum from 180 degrees. And that's the format for finding an unknown angle measurement inside of a triangle. All right, so after you've reviewed all of Module 2 and made sure you've submitted all of your assignments, you can go to my announcement page and click on the Lattice button. This will help you schedule your Module 2 DBA. Are there any questions?